And to begin the proceedings now, I have the privilege in inviting on stage our distinguished chair, Shri Ashok Kumar Rajput, Member Power System, Central Electricity Authority, CEA. अच्छा एक बार और अनाउंस कर दूंगी ये ना अनाउंस करने के लिए ठीक So, ladies and gentlemen, once again inviting on stage our distinguished chair for the session, Shri Ashok Kumar Rajput, Member Power System, Central Electricity Authority, CEA. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to go ahead with session 9. May I request our chair, Shri Ashok Kumar Rajput, Member Power System, CA, to kindly grace the stage with his august presence. I invite our session moderator and strategy deck presenter, Shri Ankit Hoshing, Director and Partner, Octus YCP, to kindly grace the stage. So let's put our hands together to welcome Shri Ankit Hoshing sir. I have the privilege in inviting eminent panelists. I invite Shri K.R. Jyotilal, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Energy, Government of Kerala.
We are waiting for so and you can announce the later again. Right? But you can invite the industry panel will start. Anita,
Ma'am, we can't break the order because the slides are in that order. May I now invite Shri Ajay Bakre, Mission Director, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. He'll be joining us a little late. I invite Dr. Anita Gupta, Head Climate Change and Clean Energy Division, Department of Science and Technology. Warm welcome to you, ma'am. I invite Shri Vivek Chandrakant Tungankar, Director Finance, ONGC. May I invite Shri Rajat Seksaria, Chief Executive Officer, Green Hydrogen and Derivatives, Adani New Industries Limited. He is from a panel of the industry panelist. I invite Shri Ranjit Gupta, Founder and Chief Executive Officer, Oceor Energy. I invite Shri Kapil Maheshwari, Chief Executive Officer, Wellspun New Energy. May I invite Shri Narendra Goyal, President Green Hydrogen, Avada Group. I invite Shri Gautam Reddy, Chief Operating Officer, Greenco Group. May I invite Shri Siddharth Gupta, Chief Executive Officer, Electrolyzers, L&T. I invite Shri Hiren Mehta, Chief Operating Officer, Green Hydrogen, ACME. May I invite Shri Naresh Lalwani, Head BD Hydrogen Business, JSW. I invite Shri Kush Singh, Sector Head Power Business, RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. I invite Shri Naresh Lalwani, Head BD Hydrogen Business, JSW, and Shri Vivek Singla, President and Head Green Hydrogen Business, Renew. So, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to session 9, the role of green hydrogen and derivatives in India's net zero future vision 2047. And to set the context for this important session,
Mr. Shyam Gupta's name is not announced.
I did.
Ah, Mr. Shyam.
May I also invite Mr. Shyam Gupta, Head Energy Transition, RIL Limited.
Sorry, sir.
So, once again, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to session 9 on the role of green hydrogen and derivatives in India's net zero future vision 2047. And to set the context for this important session, I would now like to invite Sri Ashok Kumar Rajput, Member Power Systems, Central Electricity Authority, for the context setting remarks. Let's put our hands together to welcome Sir. Sir, so for the context setting, if you could kindly give your opening remarks. Sir, ladies and gentlemen, Shri Ashok Kumar Rajput, presently serving as Member Power System, is an ex officio additional secretary to the Government of India, Central Electricity Authority, Ministry of Power. And so will be setting the context for this session.
नमस्कार एवरीबॉडी, जय भारत। सभी बोले जय भारत को अच्छा लगेगा। एक नई प्रथा शुरू करते हैं, ठीक है। सो गुड मॉर्निंग एवरीबॉडी, द डिस्टिंग्विश्ड पैनल, माय रेस्पेक्टेड गेस्ट and my colleagues, and on behalf of CEA, we welcome you all and thank the organizer for such a wonderful event. So this is the beginning, and when we begin, we should not forget the foundations where we are. This particular session particularly is on hydrogen and its derivative and its technologies and what it can do. Hydrogen has an important role. It's more than a century old thing which is known to the human being. When this hydrogen mission and the fuel cells were talked about, I was one among the distinguished group who were in the foundations. We did lot of exercise in this one. Some of the respected officers of that time, they have either retired or they have shifted their places and the organizations. So we are grateful that a large number of participants and equally large number of distinguished panel members are here. Hydrogen is basically a very good carrier of energy, and if we store it in the say in the form of the fuel cells, that becomes a source of energy. Green hydrogen and green ammonia. So green ammonia is one of the derivatives, and green ammonia has the advantage over the green hydrogen that it's easy to handle, carry, and can be used. All the panelists who are experts of their field, they will be telling that where the hydrogen or the ammonia could be used, but the obvious usage of ammonia is a great help to the farmers in terms of production of urea and other fertilizers. So that will be the major use, and this will reduce the emission on this particular globe where we are living. It will make the life healthier. It will make the environment clean if we use the green hydrogen and green ammonia as a derivative for production of the fertilizers. And that way, basically, we can say the food grains are already green, so they will be still greener when we apply urea or the green urea to that. So that is my concept of narrating such things. Ammonia as a source of energy can be used, say, in small engines, small turbines. And when we particularly talk of greening the islands of Lakshadweep or the small islands of Andaman and Nicobar, there it's not possible to lay the lines, and also in the hilly tops, it's very difficult to lay the lines and also not economical. So we can make use of either the small turbines running on ammonia or the fuel cells. Later at a later stage, not now, when the research is continued on the fuel cells, they could support as a backup facility and whatnot. So what hydrogen and why so much emphasis on this, and so many organizations are behind it and so many regulators are behind it, because it reduces the emissions on the globe, which is very much necessary. It helps in getting the energy security and to decarbonize the power sector. Also, it creates the jobs and economic development. And when its utilization and its derivatives utilization increases more and more in numbers, we will see various business models, right from the bulk sources of supply to the individual distributors. We have to make the efforts in the beginning so that the foundation is laid. This gets promoted. A time will come when the market forces itself and its utilities will drive the market and will be helpful in earning the bread and butters to the smaller ones. The bigger business will flourish. International tie-ups will develop. The present model of green hydrogen is that we produce green hydrogen here, say in India, particularly in the coastal areas, have the storage bunkers at appropriate places, and transport it to the other world, that is the European and maybe the Japan, maybe Australia and others. So that's the model particularly which is thought of. Next model will be the trains running on the hydrogen. The aviation ships and the aeroplanes, they will also be tried on the hydrogen, not in other countries, but in our own country itself. So we have to take the small steps and make it a giant mission, what has been conceived. Certain things will be must. They are the R&D, continued R&D, skilling of the pupil, safety precautions and safety standards, development of the sensors which give better alarms and prevention in case of the leakage of the hydrogen gas. The biggest problem with the hydrogen is that its leak is not detected easily. Only some hissing sound is available if the leakage is there. The confined areas for the hydrogen accumulation are very dangerous, and even if you comb or even if you circ your shirts or the woolens, that will catch fire. So we have to be careful. So open area are not harmful. So we have no fear. Another aspect will be the metallurgy and the effective metals which can support hydrogen, because the hydrogen molecule is so small that it pierces or it goes into the metals. So R&D is needed for increasing the efficiency of the electrolyzers. There is lot of scope. The yield of the hydrogen from a certain amount of the water and certain amount of the electricity need to increase. the life of the equipment, devices, and the cylinders and the pipelines. These have to be improved upon because the corrosion is expected. Next thing will come the establishment of hydrogen filling stations. PESO and other safety organizations, as well as CEA, MNRE, and whosoever are there, have to devise the methods where to locate them and what safety measures have to be taken. There are debates whether the hydrogen filling stations should be near, could be placed at the existing fuel stations, normally called as the petrol pumps, and whether the EV charging stations also could be in the same premises. These are the things which we have to see, and we need not compromise with any safety aspect because of the constraints of the space. In that direction, one silver lining is that we should use the hydrogens as far as mobility is concerned, and which is a established fact in the heavy duty long haul trucks. Cars we can begin later. Cars have been in use in certain countries, but the mass scale rollout is not there. We also need input material so that we are self-reliant. We also need certain costly metals in the form of the catalyst, that is the vanadium and also the platinum. Research are going on the iron-based catalyst, that is a silver lining. Another thing which can be done is conversion of existing fossil fuel vehicles to the hydrogen run vehicles, either in the combustion form or directly from the fuel cells. And cost and purity of the green hydrogen and what our competitors are doing, because our aim is not only to produce and not only to mention the data that we will be producing this much and this is our target, but how to market it safely, and market it at competitive price and get an edge over the world. When we talk of the production of hydrogen, we think of only of the electrolysis, and for the electrolysis we think of the green energy or the RE only of wind and solar. In the monsoon times, when our dams are filled and we can have, so those dams which are the storehouses of the energy, the electricity generated from them, line going directly to the refinery, and that electricity being used for the production of hydrogen, and the same hydrogen being used in the petrochemicals. NIPCO plants and the refinery in Assam is one such model example which we should exercise. So we have to think in all the directions, what we call it that the 360-degree debate is required, and how to take care of our safety asset as well as the market component. Thank you, and rest Ankit ji will be introducing one by one each and every expert who will be telling you so many things which I am failing to tell. One more thing from this particular dais, MNRE is playing a great role in this, but CA role should be remembered in the form of the foundation stone laying of this great green hydrogen missions and the fuel cells technology. And also, we are the one who will be providing the electricity from the planning perspective and the bulk loads of the hydrogen wherever they are coming. A proper coordination is must, and CA has to be part and parcel. If somewhere missing, the CA should be made part and parcel of this mission. So I wish all the success to the green hydrogen mission, because we have been very much closely by heart associated with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for setting the tone for today's discussion with your context setting remarks and presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed further, I have the privilege in inviting on stage Sri Abhay Bakre sir, the Mission Director, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, MNRE, Let's put our hands together to welcome Sir to join the panel. Sir plays a pivotal role in advancing India's green hydrogen mission. And now, as we proceed towards the panel discussion, we are privileged to have with us today an esteemed government panel consisting of senior leaders and policymakers who are shaping the future of India's energy landscape. And ladies and gentlemen, our panel of esteemed industry leaders are also spearheading the green hydrogen revolution in India. And to set the stage with the strategy deck presentation for our discussions and to moderate the session on Green Horizon, navigating policy finance and innovation in India's hydrogen market, we are privileged to have with us as a moderator also Sri Ankit Hoshingji, Director and Partner, Octus YCP. And may I now hand over to you, sir, for your strategy deck presentation and to kindly carry forward the proceedings of this session. So let's once again put our hands together to welcome sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rajput, for the context setting. Just yeah, just outline the key aspects of the green hydrogen journey that we would have, with it being a very important pillar of our energy transition uh, roadmap going forward. I would also like to congratulate CEA for enabling this platform for deliberations and engagement on this very important aspect. Over the course of several months, we've basically had extensive discussions with the industry to ensure that we are bringing out all the key elements of what is needed to make the green hydrogen journey a success. And this documentation will basically be a compilation of some of those suggestions and recommendations. We'll start with a brief overview of the green hydrogen ecosystem and where we are in the journey, and then specify specific recommendations that the industry has in this regard.
Before you begin with your presentation, sir, we have a small video message by Shri Prashant Kumar Singh, Secretary Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India.
India stands at the forefront of a global transition to renewable energy, leading with commitment and ambition. Our renewable capacity has surged significantly in recent years, seeing one of the largest capacity expansions globally. This growth has been propelled by supportive policies such as the PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, the PLI scheme, the PM Kusum scheme, to name a few. We are being driven by our ambitious climate goals and Panchamrit commitments. While we aim to achieve net zero by 2070, we also aspire to make renewable energy accessible to every household, business, and industry. The challenges ahead will be significant, from financing the energy transition to integrating the large scale RE into the grid. However, with right collaborations and solutions, we are confident that we'll meet our ambitious target and lead the world in clean energy adoption. Central Electricity Authority, the CEA, has been one of the key organizations enabling this transformation over the years, and I'm sure that they'll continue to play a pivotal role in times to come. I congratulate the CEA on the Golden Jubilee celebrations and wish all the best as we strive to build a cleaner, greener future for generations to come. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And once again, I hand over to you.
Thank you. All right. So while Mr. Rajput spent adequate time sort of outlining the context of where we are on the green hydrogen journey, just to summarize, while currently we have a hydrogen demand of roughly 6 million tons per annum, we expect it to grow over 5x by 2050. Currently, a large part of this demand comes from refinery as well as the fertilizer industry. But going forward, there is going to be significant demand from transport as well as power in the demand mix going forward. However, while we talk about the demand from green hydrogen from a domestic perspective, there is also significant export potential that we as a market or an economy are looking at. The current hydrogen demand globally is expected to be around 100 MTPA, and different reports or different analysis suggest different range of numbers. but we're talking anywhere between 400 to 600 million tons per annum by 2050. And more importantly, the green hydrogen is expected to be a significantly large chunk of that number by that time. Again, estimates suggest that anywhere between 70 to 90% of this hydrogen will be green hydrogen by 2050. So that represents a significant potential for green hydrogen manufacturing and development globally. And India has specific advantages, which I will also outline later, which make it a very formidable candidate in that sense. When we talk about immediate potential for green hydrogen exports, there are specific markets which present that opportunity here and now. By 2030, there is an expectation that European Union will be looking at imports of about 20 MTPA of green hydrogen. Similarly, Japan will be looking at a 3 MTPA demand and so on and so forth. So we're basically sitting on a 25 MTPA demand that we could potentially cater to. And that will be a significant startup or accelerator for our green hydrogen journey going forward. The green hydrogen mission also outlines our target of achieving 10% of the demand going forward by 2030. And if we follow the same trajectory and are in a position to capture 10% of the market by 2050, we are talking about roughly a $50 billion sales opportunity purely on green hydrogen. And this is in addition to the domestic demand that we will already be catering to. So, talking about our competitive edge, which will basically give us that kicker ahead of the other markets. One, we have abundance of renewable energy potential as well as installation now. Very recently, we as a country achieved 200 gigawatts of capacity of non-fossil fuel based energy, and that speaks volumes in terms of our transport transformation or our journey over the last decade and a half broadly. We have a target of achieving 500 gigawatts of renewables by 2030, which obviously will be very significantly supported by how we move forward on the green hydrogen journey as well. Given the significant potential both on solar and wind and other resources as well, we are blessed with relatively lower cost of generation on renewable sources, and that also gives us an edge. Further, there have been several policy interventions which have enabled us to achieve a lower cost as well as facilitate setting up of renewable energy capacity. So, all of that put together from a renewable energy standpoint, which becomes the raw material or the ingredient for manufacturing green hydrogen, provides a significant competitive advantage to us. The second is the suitability of infrastructure that we have around this. So one, purely from an energy perspective, we have a very wide and integrated transmission network, which again enables us to move forward in this journey. We have significant land banks for setting up this capacity. We also have the infrastructure for LNG transportation. We have port connectivity across the ports in our east and west coast. All of that put together again makes it a formidable positioning for us from a green hydrogen development perspective. Thirdly, while we spoke about the export market just now, just reiterating the fact that we have significant domestic consumption as well. The current demand that we have will increase significantly, and it is supported by just reiterating the fact that we are number one consumers of hydrogen globally from a fertilizers perspective, number four consumers from a refinery perspective, and so on. We being a significant hub in transportation of these energy resources and derivatives, again, provides us that advantage that can help us cater to the development of this market going forward. Further, our ability to attract foreign investment, foreign direct investment, where we can have 100% FDI in these sectors, makes it or enables us to be able to accelerate this journey. The government has done more than its bit in the recent years to be able to kickstart and take this journey forward. The green hydrogen mission that started about 3.5 years back has seen significant evolution. We have the site scheme now that is driving a lot of these government incentives that are coming in and that are supporting the private sector take this journey forward. There are incentives now on green hydrogen and green ammonia development, as well as on electrolyzer manufacturing. A total outlay of roughly 20,000 crores is something that the government has planned out, and that will help us achieve the green hydrogen mission targets of achieving roughly 5 million tons per annum capacity, which will entail a significant investment in renewable energy generation as well. So all in all, this entire program is expected to enable 8 lakh crores of investment by 2030, and it's upon all of us here together to make this a success. Talking about green hydrogen development within the country, while there are specific states identified which have an edge or present significant potential from a green hydrogen development perspective, there are several other states who have come up with their own green hydrogen policies to make sure that they contribute to this journey together. One notable case is the state of Kerala, and Sri Jyotilal will talk more about it. But there is again a significant investment outlay that has been defined for investment on green hydrogen in the state of Kerala. There is sizable government funding also that's provided, including a significant viability gap funding as well. And through a cluster approach and through a governance mechanism of having a GH council, this will prove to be one of the case studies for interventions at the state level to be able to enable this journey. So all in all, we are talking about more of a pan-India approach or a pan-India development for green hydrogen, where we will see this development not happening just in specific pockets, but all across the country, contributing to the larger goal of achieving our targets. While the government has done its bit, the private sector has also supported it wholeheartedly. We have significant investment commitments from several private sector organizations to contribute to development of green hydrogen, green ammonia, as well as on electrolyzers. This journey has also entailed significant participation to bring in synergistic capabilities across a variety of stakeholders in the private sector to be able to move towards this journey. A manifestation of the success, the initial success in this regard, is the extensive participation in the tenders for the site scheme, where in the recent tender we have had participation from 13 players for green hydrogen production and 21 players for electrolyzer manufacturing. Speaks volumes about how the private sector is enthused with the prospect of having this large market play out. What we will do now is talk about some of the key pointers or suggestions and recommendations that have essentially been compiled with the industry for everybody's reflection and deliberation in terms of how we can further strengthen this journey to be able to develop and achieve the green hydrogen potential that we have. There are broadly two aspects to this. One is supply side intervention, and the second will be demand interventions, where we are specifically talking about fiscal assistance, some of which is already coming in through the PLI scheme, with roughly 17,500 crores already laid out for sanction. There will be interventions on infra development that will be critical to this journey. And there will also be aspects of market facilitation which will help us get there. Now, a lot of this is driven by our success on development of the renewable energy industry or the renewable energy market, where both of these interventions significantly play out in getting us to where we are, which is roughly 150 gigawatts of solar and wind capacity largely, right? So while there also we had specific interventions such as purchase obligations, infrastructure facilitation, certain concessions and rates, and so on and so forth. The expectation is that some of those facilitations come into play when we talk about building this green hydrogen market, which is currently in its initial state. Talking from a demand creation perspective, the first recommendation or suggestion is essentially to have purchase obligations in line with the RPOs that I just spoke about. Some of this is also in line with where we expect the global market to be or to reach. For instance, for specific industries such as fertilizers, refineries, and steel, the suggestion is to have obligation on having at least 25% of hydrogen from green hydrogen or green ammonia sources. This is in line with how the European Union is looking at some of their targets. They, for example, have a target for roughly 40% of the requirements coming in from green hydrogen or green ammonia by 2030 and roughly 60% by 2050. So our aspiration will be to come closer to that target and maybe start with a 25% obligation starting 2027 would be a positive step in that direction. The second aspect is on blending of natural gas with green hydrogen. Again, the suggestion is to start with a 20% obligation or 20% mandate to start in 2027. At a smaller scale or with a smaller blend, this has already been tried out or piloted in the country with roughly 2.5% of hydrogen being part of the mix. UK, for instance, has already piloted this at the 20% level, and that's their target as well for the immediate future. So the aspiration again here is that we sort of align with the market in that sense and look at a 20% target starting 2027 and progressively increase it to achieve the overall potential from natural gas blending. Similarly, another aspect of demand here would be looking at fuel, specifically aviation fuel and marine fuel. Now, when we talk about the International Civil Aviation Organization with the Corsia scheme that they have, there is a mandate or a requirement to be not being carbon additive or emission additive based on the 2020 numbers that they have. And in this respect, sustainable aviation fuel will be a huge pillar of that effort. Obviously, given the limited economical viability of that, currently the focus is more on looking at carbon credits to be able to offset the emissions. Having said that, going forward, sustainable aviation fuel should also play a key role in that direction. And the suggestion is to start with that as well, with maybe a 2% blend by 2030, and a similar mandate from a marine fuel perspective. Similarly, while we spoke about the domestic demand, coming to global demand or the export market potential, we should expedite signing of the ITMOs and the JCMs more from a global perspective and the G2G agreements for us to be able to compete in the requirement on export potential or import requirements that different markets globally have. The idea also will be to be able to facilitate the supply to the global markets. And one way to do this will also be to link the ITMO prices to the EU ETS, which is sort of the right benchmark or an ideal benchmark in that sense, which will enable us to be able to competitively and viably target these markets. A third aspect on this is on demand aggregation. So similar to how SECI has picked this up for green ammonia, SECI should also pick up the demand aggregation initiative for green hydrogen that will help standardize the green hydrogen process as well as expedite or accelerate this process so that capacity addition can come in line with meeting the requirement which SECI can meet on a back-to-back basis through aggregation. Moving on to some of the assistance that the industry is suggesting or seeking for. From an infrastructure perspective, the suggestion is that the green hydrogen and its derivative should be included in the harmonized list of infrastructure subsectors. Currently, we have roughly 37 subsectors across 5 sectors which are in this list. A recent addition on the industry on the energy side has been the energy storage solutions. The suggestion is that green hydrogen and its derivative are also included to the same list so that we can get benefit of higher ECB borrowing, longer term loan or debt borrowing facilities from IIFCL and so on and so forth to make this more viable. Similarly, on SEZ and EOU benefits, more specifically on renewable energy development side, the suggestion is that this is facilitated in a variety of ways. So excess generation, for example, from the renewable energy projects should be allowed to be sold to the DTA, and custom duty, etc., may be applicable as required to make sure there is parity. There will also be multi-located renewable energy projects to support or supply power to the GH or GA capacity, and they should be treated as one, and similar benefits should be accrued to each of those capacities so that the overall project gets the benefit as prescribed or as envisaged. Similarly, there should be deemed export benefits provided for capacity in SEZ and EOU as well. Coming to production linked incentives, while there is already a 17,500 crores outlay, the suggestion is to be able to expand this net and maybe fix the PLI and have the developers take advantage of that with, let's say, a particular timeline in mind for setting up this capacity. So, for instance, any capacity set up by 2030 is entitled to a specific PLI that's prescribed by the government. That will go a long way in adding significantly more capacity in line with the aspirations of the targets that we have as a market. In case we continue with the bidding mechanism, a CFD mechanism or longer term contracts, because currently we're talking about shorter contracts, longer term contracts with CFD will also go a long way as hydrogen or green hydrogen prices fall in future. This will help ensure the viability of the plants that are being set up today. Similarly, the subsidy tenure, which is currently 3 years for green hydrogen, and 5 years for electrolyzers, should be extended so that the developers are able to get benefits and again set up these capacities viably. Talking about the infrastructure support, similar to the aggregation that we spoke about from a green hydrogen and a green ammonia perspective, it will be useful to have SECI aggregate energy, renewable energy, again on a back-to-back basis, supplying it to green hydrogen and green ammonia developers. So with this role, there will obviously be significant cost efficiencies and process efficiencies that SECI will be able to bring in, and that will facilitate faster development in that sense. From a port infra perspective, bunkering and storage infra for green hydrogen derivatives again will be critical. Several ports are already identified as GH hubs, but this can be expanded to more ports, both on the east and the west coast. And such infrastructure development will go a long way in moving forward in this journey. Similarly, when we talk about significant renewable energy development, the transmission infrastructure also needs to be augmented in an expeditious manner. We currently know that several large key projects are also significantly delayed. Focus on expanding capacity targeted towards green hydrogen in an expeditious manner will be very critical in that aspect. Another element that becomes important is approvals and other facilitation. It's important to provide expeditious approval to for land, and also have a single window clearance facilitated for both central and state agencies for green hydrogen project. Similarly, currently we have roughly 70 approvals that are required for a developer to set up a green hydrogen or green ammonia facility. One of the critical ones is obviously environmental clearance. If we can accord wide category status to green hydrogen and its derivative projects, this will go a long way in making this more streamlined. Couple of more critical suggestions. One, it is suggested that we adopt a USD pricing specifically for export oriented projects, adopt a USD pricing for green hydrogen and green ammonia uh, capacity that's being put out, and the sale from that will help us, one, link better or connect better to the market, align with the market prices. And in some cases, given initially at least, we are also relying on import both on the renewable energy as well as on the electrolyzer side. This will also provide a natural hedge that will make this more financially attractive. Lastly, while we talk about exports, several of the off-takers are not willing to consider export ban as a force majeure. So if the government sort of highlights that this is not really a likely situation to be, it will help us move forward significantly in that direction. We'd also put together a longer list of other recommendations. I will not go into the details considering the paucity of time. Having said that, this is being circulated to all of you in the docket that's already available. These are again around the aspects that I had already covered, but more specific and more elaborate suggestions on those. Thank you. Uh, yeah, considering that we have about 50 minutes on the clock to finish, we'll get to the discussion here. Again, my suggestion to all the esteemed panelists will be to keep your responses brief, given that while we have the privilege of having a very large panel, we don't have the corresponding privilege of having more and more time available at our discretion. So I will suggest that if we can keep our responses to about 2 to 3 minutes, that will be great in making up time for this. Thank you. Okay. The way we will conduct this is we will have specific aspects for each of you to elaborate on and voice your opinion and inputs on, so that we are able to cover the conversations and the key topics for discussion in the time that we have available. I will start with Shri Jyotilal. Thanks for being here. Uh, the specific aspect that we wanted to touch upon with you is that while Kerala has significant renewable energy potential along with the supporting infrastructure, wanted to get your thoughts and views on how state governments are typically looking at green hydrogen as an initiative. Is it largely from a sustainability perspective, from an economic development perspective, or a more overarching theme that you have? And while you can talk about Kerala and possibly also talk about how state governments are looking at this in general, it will help everybody reflect on how governments are thinking about green hydrogen and green ammonia development. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Uh, in fact, Kerala is one state which is anyway green. We have got 1/3 area under forest, and we would like to become carbon neutral by 2050 and 100% RE by 2040. So that's a declared vision of the state, and uh, so naturally we need to look at how do we reduce the emission. So transport was one sector. We don't have many big industries that polluting industry. I think so we are looking at initially started with electric mobility, and probably we have got one of the highest growth rate, almost 12% growth rate in electric vehicles. But the electric vehicle has got its own limitations. So naturally we need to look at what is the energy storage instead of the battery. That is where first we started with going for fuel cell for the bus and trucks. I think we have reached a stage where Indian Space Research Organization, probably the greatest scientists of space, are all from Kerala. In fact, we are talking about the interplanetary movement, but can't we run a bus on or a truck on Earth? So that is where now we are looking at with ISRO and Reliance India, Ashok Leyland, how we can put liquid hydrogen instead of maybe high engine technology is already developed, so that we get a range of almost 1,500 kilometers with one filling. So that is one that we started with that. Then how do we aggregate the demand so that we get more industries to come make use of the we have got enough solar potential. Then the water resources, we have got 3,000 TMC water, out of which only 300 TMC we are using. So enough resources for what is energy independence. We are independent now, but we want to be energy independent. Basically, if you see the GDP, the power consumption, average power consumption of a country shows, or the state shows what is economic growth happening. That's a direct indication. In fact, last summer we had almost 15% growth rate in the power consumption. That shows that people have got purchasing power. I think that's a very good yardstick. So we were looking at then how do we make use of the maybe the solar potential available. Floating solar policy we have brought, so that you have got maybe around 6,000 megawatt we can make. Canal tops almost 8,000 kilometers we have got. Then offshore wind we are yet to explore. Then wind potential something around 2,500 megawatt. Then nuclear, because we got the largest deposit of thorium in the world, and one maybe for another 1,000 years we can power. It is a closed loop reactor. Already Baba Atomic Research and Bark has already developed a pilot unit where third stage it becomes uranium and it will become the what is a full closed loop cycle. Now SMR technology has already come where you can do 50 megawatt to 100 megawatt. You put, and NTPC, we are in touch with NTPC, NPCL for setting up a small modular reactors. So for to become net zero, what all we need to do? So we are looking at it. Hydrogen is one of the key thing, especially for refineries and, as you said, ammonia, fertilizer. India being the largest market in the world and India being the largest importer of ammonia, we need not depend on anybody. We are self-sufficient. We ourselves will be able to consume, and if we are able to produce ammonia at the cheapest rate. So that is where the role of power comes. Cheapest power, if we are able to give it at 3 rupees, I think our ammonia will be competitive in the world. Even for we need not import, we can do the import substitution. So then we are looking at aviation. Probably we built the first solar airport in the entire world. Now we are looking at how sustainable aviation fuel can be brought about instead of what is say. And I was just discussing with the MNRE representative. In fact, I should thank CEA because I see all the three are there. The people who set the policy, that is the tantra or the strategy, that is the CEA. And you have got the maybe government of India, which does the maybe mission, what is or the guidelines, national. So that is the mantra, and we are the people from the state, which we would actually action is in the field in the state. So we have got yantra, mantra, and tantra. All the three are assembled here. We thank you for CA for taking the opportunity to bring all together so that the views and viewpoints are taken care of. Only one or two suggestions I have got. When you look at the strategically, the CA is ultimately one is, see, the Europe needs a 10 million metric ton. That means 880 ships they require in a year if you have to ship. In fact, last time I was there in Brisbane, so Australia has already did the shipping to of liquid hydrogen to Japan. So we need to build ships. This is one of the strategic investment India has to make. I think probably Cochin shipyard or any of these shipyards, we should support that, because I don't think anybody will invest in that. Secondly, the common infrastructure, the bunkering facility. Maybe you said hydrogen and its derivatives. Ammonia is a low-hanging fruit, methanol, but then ultimately we need to reach liquid hydrogen, or what is the purest form, just like LNG trade has become a reality. Now with Indians themselves have patented now technology to liquefy at the lowest rate, maybe 50 cents per kg. I think using the cold energy from LNG, I think this is one thing which we need to promote. Then the bunkering facility and the common infrastructure, which I think we need to make. Aviation is another area where we have got. Then, as I said, energy. In the last session, I was just listening. It's a time for open integrated grids where energy molecule, whether it is electron, radiation, or molecule, as is I always used to mention, the sage Vishwamitra who gave the first mantra, which Gayatri mantra, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha. That means materialization, vibration, radiation. The world is nothing but these three, whether it is solar or the molecule or electrons, which is a electricity, or you convert into hydrogen, the molecule. Ultimately, everything is same. That is what Advaita is saying. Matter and energy are not different. So we need to look at even biomass is a source of energy. Solar is there, wind is there, nuclear is there. I think all these are sources of energy. How best we can integrate, open integrated grid. Recently, I saw one 2G, one company from Germany, when the German Chancellor Minister was here. So what they make, whether you use natural gas or any of the compressed biogas or hydrogen, the same engine will generate power out of it. Now they have gone up to 4 megawatt, 50 kilowatt upwards. They got the small engines. I think we need to look at open integrated grids and how best we can use the technology so that we can give the power at the lowest rate in the daytime. So the companies will be able to generate hydrogen at cheapest rate. In fact, I operate the largest hydrogen economic group in the world, probably with experts from across the globe, including Israel. So there are technologies by which you can make it at $1 per kg. They have reached 40 units of electricity per kg with a membraneless electrolyzer, S2 Pro, and they have signed up with the Doral, probably These are all the cutting edge technology. My left side is a DSG representatives here. My first request is you need to innovate. You need to develop the technology in house. That means you need to continuously do. Maybe we can start from where it is stopped somewhere else. So technology, one is liquefaction, I said, maybe hydrogen generation, direct splitting of water using the solar. Already they have achieved. So we should get it. India is the largest market. I think we should try to get all these through international cooperation, as you said. And there are, I'm not getting into that, a lot of things are there because due to paucity of time. Anyway, my presentation I can share. So thank you for giving an opportunity to share some of the thoughts. I think this is the time for India to lead the country and the world to what you say, and to the energy independence. The hydrogen mission will be able to take it forward, and let us be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for elaborating on the thought process that the state has and your own views on how we should progress in this journey. My next question will be to Mr. Gautam Reddy from Greenco. Uh, Sri Jyotirlal also spoke about this in terms of development of hubs, and we've seen this play out as a global phenomenon in terms of development of valleys and hubs from a green hydrogen perspective, where we're talking about convergence of production, demand, and export. How do you see this panning out in the Indian context? What are the key factors to success that you see here? And any specific suggestions on building this ecosystem?
Thank you. I'll start with an example. I think if you look at the Antwerp, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, ARA region, the so-called region where Europe is focusing on, that should give us an idea of why it's extremely important to create a hub. We need scale, we need size. We all know the economics of green hydrogen is a challenge at this point of time, and but we are also optimistic that we'll bring it down, and that can only happen with scale and size. Uh, Now, if you try to do this everywhere, all across the country, I know we have a lot of demand in the country, but at least in the initial years, in the first half a decade at least, we should we will not be able to achieve scale and size if we spread ourselves too thin, right? A primary example would be common infrastructure. Of course, we all know about the transmission lines, but you also need a lot of port infrastructure available, especially if you're going to be effective exporting this, which is what we want to do. But I'll just give you an example. If you have a big ship, a 60,000 ton carrier, which we don't have today in ammonia, or a standard 25,000 ton carrier, the difference in shipping from India to Europe for all of us who are focused on shipping is close to 60 to $80. Right now, that kind of infra, if you try to create it in 10 ports in India, it's not going to happen. Right. So this is just one example. So from scaling up rapidly, creation of hubs, therefore, is very important. And also for being having an ability for government to create a common infrastructure, which we are all asking the government, that also cannot happen if you are all over the place. So in that context, I think this is extremely important. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Uh, I will uh, I will now ask Shri Vivek Singla from Renew to essentially reflect on the fact that while there is a growing mandate or growing focus on catering to the domestic hydrogen demand and converting that to green hydrogen, there is also significant export potential that we are looking at, which we also spoke about. What do you think should be the strategy to create a balance between the two so that we are progressing well on our green hydrogen, green ammonia development journey while making sure that we are catering to both the domestic and the export markets?
Yeah. Hello, thank you. Let me start by complimenting MNRE, CEA, CTU, and various state governments who have been able to put India at the forefront of green hydrogen development eh, on the world map. Believe me, India is one of the country which has come out with very clear and firm policies on both the sides, supply as well as demand. On the supply side, lot of incentives have been provided by various state governments as well as the central government, like CTU charges waiver, subsidy for green hydrogen projects developments, uh, ALMA waiver, SEZ benefits. State governments have come up with capital subsidies, STU charges waiver, demand charges waiver, electricity demand waiver, electricity duty waiver. All these things, if we put together and quantify it, the benefit that comes to it, it's more than the benefits that is being provided by any of the country for establishing green hydrogen projects in the country. On the demand side, India has come up with clear and firm mandates. Tenders are already there in the public domain for 200 KTPA of green hydrogen and 750 KTPA of green ammonia, which speaks volume about India, specifically given the fact that the target for India, net carbon zero target for India is 2070. While complementing and uh, the efforts of India, now look at the efforts which other countries in the world have been putting forward. On the supply side, some of the countries have come up with some incentives. On the demand side, still, see, this is a costly product and it's going to remain costly in the foreseeable future. Without the efforts of the government, support of the government, the demand is not going to be forthcoming. And that's what eluding all the developers in the world. There are quite a few projects which are in advanced stage of development, and a few are in the stage of construction also. But still, there are no off takers for green hydrogen and green ammonia in the world as of now. What the uh, developed countries of the world who have a target of net zero carbon for by 2035 have to come up with the mandates on the lines of RPO for green hydrogen and green ammonia obligations. A clear roadmap for that and implementation of carbon cess if people are not able to achieve those targets. And this carbon cess, mind, it has to be more than the difference between the cost of green hydrogen and gray hydrogen. Only then this industry will start taking shape, will come on its own 2 lakhs, and over a period of time when the industry matures just like any other industry, uh, these benefits can be curtailed over a period of time. Another thing that these many of the developed countries are coming out with are they are putting irrational, illogical constraints on import of green hydrogen from the country, just like foreign subsidy regulations. Most of these countries have been providing the support to their projects which will be coming up in their country. At the same time, they are putting an obstacle and they are asking hundreds of questions regarding the investment, operating aid, foreign subsidy regulations, what are the kind of support the government, your project is getting, so as to, I'll say, dissuade import of green hydrogen from these countries. I think uh, we should move towards the India's objective of making India an export hub. It's a costly product. India has a requirement of 5 to 6 million ton of green hydrogen. We can always green it. The government has already taken some steps. But going forward, we have to concentrate at the same time on the export of green hydrogen and green ammonia. And I would urge the Ministry, MNRE, to work with Ministry of External Affairs to come to persuade the developed countries to come out with such mandates and obviously to pursue them from dissuading import of green hydrogen and green ammonia products to their countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. My next question would be to Shri Ajay Bhakre from MNRE. So we spoke about the export potential for green hydrogen, and some of this was also elaborated by Mr. Singla. We wanted to understand from you on the measures or interventions that are envisaged for us to leverage the competitive potential or advantage that India has to be the export hub for the world. In the presentation, also, we outlined the abundance of renewable infrastructure and the demand that we have. All of that put together, How can we, what kind of additional measures do you think are envisaged to be able to move forward in this journey?
Yeah, thank you. Let me first compliment CEA for their Golden Jubilee celebration and also bringing out this conclave. And as we call it as a National Green Hydrogen Mission, and before hydrogen, we have a word green, and green means basically the renewable power. So CEA cannot be different from the green hydrogen mission, as Rajput Saab has initially asked. So basically, we call hydrogen as a green hydrogen as a power fuel. So whatever we cannot use it as a electricity consumption, we have to use hydrogen or the green hydrogen uh, generated or produced from the electricity. Now, the purpose or the significance of green hydrogen for the domestic market and for the international market, as we see, are completely different. In India, basically, we are complementing our huge strength of renewables, non-fossil capacity generation, which has come all along for the last decade or so, and we want to keep on increasing the electricity demand, and this demand even further be added by the demand of green hydrogen production. So that's the USP, because as far as India is concerned, we are clear on our trajectory. After the Glasgow one, we prepared in Bureau as part of Ministry of Power the complete roadmap. Green hydrogen was not a very clear requirement to decarbonize Indian economy, because we had already enough solutions or strategy. But for the other countries, especially the developed countries, who have many more stringent target, because we have the intensity based targets, they have absolute targets like fit for 55, or so the entire Europe has to come down by 55% absolute emissions by 2030. So for them, the USP of green is the carbon difference, the emission difference between the existing fuel and the green hydrogen. So with these two different purpose and justifications, our strategy also have to be different, but it has to be complementary. As you rightly said, in the mission, we have a large chunk, as you mentioned, for the export. But the export can only be strengthened for for through two actions. The first thing is we have to also ensure there is enough demand within the domestic scenario. Because if we just go back a little about 10 years, what story of solar success, the cost coming down from 16 rupees to 2.5 rupees. It's because we we had the electricity demand. So the power was just produced from a solar, it was put into grid. The consumer was not aware whether he is getting 1% solar and 99% coal. So the demand was already there and demand was growing. So wherever, the first thing is that the domestic demand of hydrogen, if it is slowly shifted 1%, 2%, 5%, you mentioned about the obligation. So all those demands, if there is a steady demand creation for the hydrogen, that means the replacing the existing hydrogen, that will first give the backbone, or the, you can say, the base load or the base demand for the hydrogen producer, and that's the first focus. Second thing, coming back, the demand for green hydrogen is definitely there in the developed countries, because they want to decarbonize. Now, those countries where they are using either hydrogen as a gray fuel or the high carbon fuel, there is a straightway replacement possible in those developed countries. So those external or the foreign demands we have to catch up. Then there are other sectors where hydrogen is a decarbonization solution, as we call it, the refinery and steel in European countries. And they have the targets to decarbonize. So these are the second sectors which we need to grab. Now, definitely, as you said, it cannot happen only B2B level. The government has to interact or leverage the diplomatic relations. So that's why we are trying to have these hydrogen kind of agreements, or whether it's Article 6.2 or any other kind of hydrogen roadmaps, etc., with all potential countries who have the compulsion to decarbonize, who have their targets, and hydrogen or the green hydrogen offers a, a very useful solution for them to decarbonize. Now, in that case, we have to compare the cost of green hydrogen which they are expecting and how can we actually match or compete is, because we have similar competitors coming from other countries, which the industries available in this panel is also fully aware. So these things we have to identify. But yes, it's very crucial that we identify the demands in other countries, pursue them, follow with them, and use our best relations to make sure that our producers get a huge quantity of external orders. So that will strengthen our overall hydrogen ecosystem. It will benefit our producers domestically and also evolve our own market for domestic consumption. Thank you.
Thank you. So just taking cue from the point that you mentioned regarding how do we match the cost at which we can supply and the expectations from the market, I will pose this question to Shri Kapil Maheshwari. Uh, as Sir also mentioned, the high cost of green hydrogen and its derivatives is obviously limiting the growth on capacity addition or production volumes. What are those key levers that you think can be leveraged to bridge the cost between green and grey hydrogen?
Thanks, Ankit, and congratulations to CEA for on their golden jubilee. Uh, I would answer this possibly in three buckets. First is all the technology and policy initiatives. Second, possibly is on the electrolyzers, and third would be largely on financing. You also mentioned in the presentation that there are some initiatives which are already in place, like when you're producing renewable energy for production of green hydrogen, you could set up it in SEZ or EOUs. That gives us a benefit of waivers on taxes and duties. Also, from that perspective, if there is an implementation on the other side on carbon taxes and penalties, that will help in bridging the gap. I wouldn't say bringing down the cost, but at least bridging the gap for that perspective. And that is what we are seeing why exports also, because some of those countries have those mechanisms already in place. Uh, the other part of it is to look at uh, what we just heard is also the cost of renewable power coming down over the last 12 years from the beginning of 2010, 12 is largely, can we get the round the clock power now in the same prices like what it was for the intermittent power? So if we are able to achieve the same LCOE for round the clock power than what we have for intermittent, and that is where storage will play a key role. um, and when I say storage, it is all kinds of storage, possibly from battery for a shorter duration to long duration energy storage. There was a session yesterday on PSP also in that regard. So how do we store power and how do we still make the round the clock power in the pricing what we are right now able to produce with solar and wind on intermittent basis? Because around 60-65% of the overall production for green hydrogen is related to the cost of power. So we'll be able to resolve a much larger problem if we are able to bring down that cost. The second, when I say on the electrolysis, it's on both on technology. So as efficiencies are increasing, so lesser power consumption per kg of hydrogen production, uh, then more number of cycles. So instead of using then stack for 10 years, can I still use it for 15, 20 years? The sizes are increasing. We used to hear a lot within 1000 nm cube per hour. People are moving and now doing experimentation with 3000 nm cube, 4000 nm cube as well. And at the same time, cost of BOP to do everything. So different configurations coming from can I use 4 electrolyzer and still use one ASU or an purification unit? So the overall cost of balance of plant in the electrolyzers also needs to reduce. And at the same time, the technology improvement in electrolysis can bring down the cost. So can I possibly get the features of an SOEC in an alkaline electrolyzer at the cost of alkaline what it is right now? So I mean, I'm just telling you the levers. Of course, those are wish list. And third, when I said on financing, it's new. So unlike renewables, where we see a very easy non-recourse project finance, we still need yet to see that the cost of debt, cost of equity is as low or as good as what it is in the renewable story. So possibly uh, moving on from debt equity ratios, what is there in renewable, can that be achieved for green hydrogen? And I believe as we move from pilot stage projects to larger projects now, because at pilot stage, this would definitely be a little more expensive in terms of project finance. But as we move on larger projects, we'll definitely see more beneficial, more attractive terms of financing. So all these things, levers put together, would at least play a key role in bridging the gap between the gray hydrogen and green hydrogen. Thank you.
Thank you. That sort of sets the context for the next set of questions that I have for the next set of panelists. So the first point that you made was basically around SEZ's EOUs. My question is to Mr. Ranjit Gupta from OCR. Uh, so on or focusing on export-oriented hydrogen development, SEZs and EOUs obviously are sort of key or critical to that journey. What do you see as the major policy, regulatory, and operational challenges in developing these large case facilities within these zones, and what interventions are suggested?
Thanks, Ankit, and thanks to CA. I think when the initial projects were envisaged and the government of India came out with the green hydrogen mission, largely the plan was to export hydrogen. And when you are exporting hydrogen or ammonia, largely hydrogen derivatives, the main thing was setting them up in the special economic zone. So therefore, it is easier to there are no taxes, and then you are competing in the global commodity pool, so therefore you need to make sure that you are the most competitive. And there are certain challenges which are associated with SEZs because sometimes the government had come out with policies where you were not allowed to do captive projects in SEZs, and transfer of power from one SEZ to another, or for example a wind project is spread over a large area, and SEZs are supposed to be contiguous. So there are several issues. Some of them have already been resolved. Some of them are hopefully getting resolved soon. So those were imperatives for us as a nation to compete with the Middle Eastern nations or with Australia or the US when supplying supplying hydrogen derivatives outside India. But now, as far as the Indian market is concerned, even for the Indian market, it is very important to sort out all of these issues because we have to understand that even though we are supplying green hydrogen or green hydrogen derivatives within the country, we have to do that from SEZs simply because of the fact that we are actually, replacing exports. Sorry, replacing imports, whether it is natural gas, which is imported, or it is ammonia that is imported. Either way, when we use hydrogen in a refinery or we use ammonia in a fertilizer industry, the raw material for it, the natural gas or the ammonia, is imported. And therefore, for the Indian industry to be at par with whatever is imported, for it to be an import substitution, it's very important that these projects come up in SEZs or EOUs. And we request, and we have been requesting the government to make sure that all the small impediments which prevent us from setting up these projects in SEZs and EOUs are taken away, so that we can compete on a level playing field with the people who are exporting into India, so that when a when a consumer in India, whether it is a fertilizer company, whether it is a refinery, when they compare the cost of hydrogen or compare the cost of ammonia, which they are importing, they should be able to see that the difference between the same hydrogen and ammonia produced in India is similar, not very different from what they are importing, because we are also standing on the same level playing field. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. My next question is to Mr. Narendra Goyal from Avada. Yeah.
Hello.
Just moving on the sort of the cost waterfall that we are getting to, where we spoke about SEZ EOUs. The other aspect which was also spoken about was the cost of renewable energy itself, right? What do you think are the key challenges in sourcing renewable energy for green hydrogen and derivative projects? And what are your suggestions or interventions that can help in this regard?
Thank you, Ankit. Thank you, CEA and Avada, for giving me this opportunity to be in front of you all. See, uh, renewable energy availability, I'm sure, is not an issue, as we are all discussing the ramping up of the capacities to 500 gigawatt. But supply of same RE on round the clock basis to green hydrogen projects is an issue. Connectivity of the capacities is an issue. And in fact, to be more specific, timely supply of RE to any green hydrogen project is one of the key drivers. You assume at a location in Odisha, where I think the maximum capacities as on date are planned, the state of Odisha is having 6 gigawatt capacity, and around 3 gigawatt will be required for particular location if all the projects are implemented simultaneously, which I'm sure will be. So creating infrastructure to supply 50% of the state's capacity to one location requires large infrastructure in timely manner. Any delay, 3 months or 6 months delay, will be sort of a criminal action. As you know, huge investments in hydrogen projects and not getting power means we are adding to the unproductive costs in terms of uh, interest cost and loss of revenue. So these things has to be in mind in the policymakers. And my request and suggestion here is to CEA to request the government and the concerned departments if they can expedite the infrastructure to supply power RE to these projects in timely manner as the plan is already given by the developers. Then the second aspect is the cost of such RE on round the clock basis. All of us are aware that the cost of RE is very, very competitive in India. In fact, first among equals in across the globe. But when we talk of RERTC on round the clock, the cost component in terms of non-solar power gets added up. And again, it will vary from project to project. Availability will vary from location to location. My suggestion is that there should be a central agency. Say, for example, I'm only naming for an example, but I leave it to the policymakers in the country. SECI per se, as they are helping the green hydrogen industry by aggregating the demand and then procuring green hydrogen and supplying to those in terms of ammonia. And again, SECI is already working as an aggregator for RE and supplying through various PPAs. My request is if the same can be extended to RERTC, if one nodal agency can procure and supply at uniform tariff, of course, I'll request for concessional tariff, in fact, because we are in the nascent stage, as every small child needs support from a parent during the learning phase of their walking. That doesn't mean that that child doesn't want to walk. The same way hydrogen industry wants to be self-sustainable, but initial months or initial years, we require support from the government as a parent so that, but I assure you, sir, I think Mr. Bakre was talking about the efficiencies, 55 units. Mr. Bakre, I assure you, once these projects will be online, we will be the best among the global capacities. We will be best among the efficiencies. And I want to just mention one thing. World's most efficient plant, ammonia plant, is in India. I don't know, many of you may not be aware. So India is already among the best efficient plants. We are even surpassing the companies like Yara, who used to be the best at some point of time. Thank you very much, Ankit.
Thank you. Thank you. Another aspect of the cost stack up on green hydrogen and derivatives is the electrolyzer cost. My next question is to Dr. Anita Gupta. There have been significant advancements made in electrolyzer technology, with several countries leading the way in this respect. How is the government thinking about adopting some of this as well as accelerating technology advancement domestically? And what are some of the interventions that are being envisaged?
So thank you, Ankit, and my best wishes to CA for their Golden Jubilee. And in fact, yesterday only I came to know that CA has announced that India has already clocked in 200 gigawatts of renewable power. So that's commendable. Given the overarching targets by 2030 to be 500 gigawatts of total renewable energy, and we are actually 50% has to be through non-fossil fuels. So that's really a very welcome and good news on that front. And as I'm so happy to be part of the most powerful panel ever been, of 15 odd people discussing about the future of India's power scenario when we are targeting to be energy independent by 2047. And it's so good to know that in fact, the panel represents an ecosystem by itself. And when India or any country embarks on a new technological, you can say, journey, the first and foremost is how, as a country, as a nation building exercise, we discuss about how to create an enabling and conducive ecosystem and the environment. That is the first aspect as a government we discuss. And the first foundation of this ecosystem is obviously when you are targeting to really scale up our indigenous capabilities is through how do we strengthen our research, development, and innovation environment in the country? How do we create the critical mass of researchers, institutions to drive the R&D agenda? So in this direction, let me apprise the August gathering here. DST has been the pioneers in terms of the driving the entire fundamental as well as the applied research in the country. Thanks to the generous support we have got, and in fact, you really talk about the entire landscape of clean energy transition. We have been pioneers. So we started off with the hydrogen and fuel cell program, research program, and we have actually supported close to 70 award projects, and we have really created and strengthened the institutional capabilities. You talk of any um, uh, classical case of any IITs or ICERs or NITs or even private institutions. We are there in terms of support. And the recent initiatives to really foster R&D in the country is through a very new entity which we have uh, established is ANRF, which stands for A stands for Anusandhan, the Hindi of research. Anusandhan National Research Foundation, ANRF, is the new kid in the block in terms of lending support for critical, both on the cutting edge side, which India wants to position itself technologically, and also for the research for relevance in terms of we really want to take along each and every individual of 1.4 billion people. So research translation should really benefit the entire spectrum of India, social spectrum of India, and the social fabric of India. So this ANRF, unlike the support we have been giving entirely pushed from the government, but this actually 70% of the funding has to flow from philanthropists or from the industry led. So we that kind of research will be led by industry as well, and then 25% will be through government support. So it's a 50,000 CR worth of funding, and PM happens to chair this ANRF board. First meeting already took place, and clean energy pillar is a strong pillar in driving the research. And also, I would like to apprise that DST and I particular are part of the global platform which is known as Mission Innovation, which is there to catalyze the R&D in and enabling various countries to have the clean energy transition pathways. And recently, last week only, I was there in Brazil, where the G20 Energy Working Group, Clean Energy Ministerial, and Mission Innovation Ministerial also took place. So collectively, in terms of the declaration, It's a clear that we need to the march towards clean energy pathways is definitely going to be a mix of all the various you can say pillars and pieces of the entire clean energy value chain. Starting from, I completely agree, that we have to take into across when the distributed variable renewable energy are going to be fed in our grid. Our grid needs to be really smart. It needs to be really backed up by strong storage, you can say, technologies, because that is going to be the game changer in the entire transition pathways. And recently, Office of PSC has already brought out a study where 7 scenarios have been discussed about what could be the our pathways for 2070 net zero. In terms of that, if we because India as a most populous country and the fifth largest economy, aspiring to be third largest one in near future by 2027, we really, our energy demands are going set to rise. At the same time, we have the overarching objective of limiting the Earth's temperature to 1.5 degree. So how we are walking a very tightrope? How do you strike a balance? And therefore, the research and innovation holds a very significant and important place. And we are there really to support from the industry-led grant challenges, because going forward, we'll not be only supporting, we really want to engage with the like-minded energy industry partners in the entire journey, because through that only we can bridge the time to market. Whatever we are doing, we don't want the technologies to be restricted at TRL levels of 4 or 5. At the lab level, we want to really translate and really accelerate the transition process from, so that they reach the TRLs of 8, 9. Strong industry participation. In fact, most of our R&D projects henceforth are designed keeping industry partner in mind, and those kind of projects are really encouraged, because we want to have the skin in the game of industry, all the stakeholders. And a new initiative which we will be soon announcing, which is in line with our mission innovation clean hydrogen mission, is overall all 23 member countries has announced by 2030 there will be hydrogen valleys, about close to 100 odd in across the globe. Europe leads this table. We have just completed the exercise of having DPRs, and we are in the process of getting final nod from Department of Expenditure for going ahead with this. And there we are actually will be demonstrating small scale green hydrogen production. The entire value chain will be demonstrated on site, and the preference will be given to the places where on site production and on site utilization is showcased, because we are minimizing on the transportation part. So that will, and the off-takers will be depending upon the whether it's a fine chemical sector, it's in the shipping sector, green steel making, or blending with the city gas distribution, mobility sector. So all these sectors have been considered. We are starting at a very modest level, 2 tons per day. That's the target. And well identified locations are being targeted for this kind of interventions. And the way the future holds in terms of moving ahead from alkaline electrolyzer to PAM to anion based membraneless electrolyzers, SOSC. So all these, and in terms of what Mr. Jyoti Lal has talked about, the prospects of liquid hydrogen, as well as storage metal hydrides. And also, given the vast coastline India has, the seawater electrolysis. So all these are the new areas of research, and ultimate overarching objective of research innovation is how do we make this green hydrogen at par with gray hydrogen. So that will be the overarching objective for all the research innovations, to make it affordable, available, accessible, and attractive for industry uptake and larger commercialization, which NGHM is also targeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Staying on the point of technology advancement, you spoke about the research programs the government is driving. My next question is to Mr. Siddharth Gupta from L&T. Electrolyzer costs obviously, remain a challenge, and one of the key factors that was also mentioned is how do we drive technology advancement in that direction. If you can just throw some more light on the private sector focus and participation on this, and any specific aspect that you think the government needs to help more on.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Ankit. Uh, Compliments to CA for this Golden Jubilee celebrations. And, this is the first time I'm a part of a 15-member panel and able to meet such distinguished people who are here. So thank you very much. As far as L&T is concerned, we have sort of indigenously manufactured and assembled an electrolyzer at our green hydrogen plant at Hazira. And whatever I'm speaking will be based on the data that we have from there. So typically, if you look, whatever has been encapsulated in terms of, because the time is less, I'll try to summarize it. In terms of the levelized cost of hydrogen, if you take the capex to the opex split, it works out to be capex is around 35%, I think, or 30%, which Kapil was saying, and opex is around 70%. Now, the electrolyzer and the balance of electrolyzer sits within the capex bucket, and the electricity, which is also consumed by the electrolyzer, sits in the OPEX budget. So typically, first talking about the OPEX part of it, because that has a major bearing on the cost of green hydrogen, there are a number of steps. So typically, if you see the efficiency or the specific energy consumption of the electrolyzer, which is the number of units of electricity consumed to produce 1 kg of hydrogen, if we have to optimize that, then there are, I would say, 2 or 3 steps there in the electrolyzer, which is, say, the membrane, which is responsible for transfer of the OH minus ions. Second is the electrode assembly, and the third is the coatings on the cathodes. So these 3 areas are the ones, because ultimately, if you have to increase the efficiency, what do you have to do? You have to increase the surface area, you have to increase the activity which is happening within the electrolyzer, so that more amount of hydrogen can be produced for the same units of electricity. And there is a lot of activity which at L&T we are doing. We've set up our own R&D cell, and we are concentrating on these areas. Uh, Typically, coming here is the cost aspect, if I come to it. And in that, membranes today, we do not have a supplier in India who can supply quality membranes. And that is one area which we have been discussing with the government of India also, because ultimately the government of India has to step in to give that confidence to these foreign there are only 2 or 3 well-known OEMs in this area, and taking care of the IP considerations, sort of have a technology transfer with a local vendor here and get that value system in place. Second, naturally, we've discussed about scaling the production capabilities, because when you go in for larger stack sizes, module sizes, you'll be able to optimize on the cost. From besides this, is one or two other points which I would like to say is uh, i- sort of tie-ups between the industry and the academia, specifically with a reference of projects which are based on optimization of efficiency and cost, is something which is very important. And we are also discussing with various educational institutions. But if the government steps in and sort of puts in some dedicated programs, this will definitely help the overall cause. One aspect which has also been said is creation of demand, though the government of India has taken number of steps, and which have been sort of echoed by my panelists. But I think for this ecosystem to thrive, it's very important that demand is created, and this is based on sort of the huge amount of investment which companies like ours are right now doing. One more point which I would also like to mention is countries where, if you see, where manufacturing is 25% or plus of their GDP, also develop the backward integration in line with what the forward thing is. Meaning, if we are going to have a requirement of 6 to 8 gigawatts of electrolyzer supplies in the future, have we developed the vendor base in the country which will take care of that? Is also a sort of a thought which I would like to leave on the table. And that is it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Uh, Moving on, my next question is to Mr. Kush Singh from RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. How do you see the role of small nuclear reactors in production of green hydrogen on a viable basis?
Thanks, Ankit, and thank you, CA, for giving the opportunity. Coming to this topic of small modular reactors, uh, first I'd like to take the house to the phase where we did this Pokhran test and we were banned by the world. And the only two nuclear reactors we had was Tarapur 1 and 2, the G nuclear plants, which were based on enriched uranium from USA. We were shunned by the world. The fuel was banned to us, and we were left like absolutely in vacuum. So we then looked towards Canada, and then we got those CANDU heavy water reactors, and we made ourselves self-sufficient with the amount of natural uranium we have. Learning from that phase, uh, small modular reactor technology which we need to adopt is should be thorium based. So as mentioned by Mr. Jyotilal, Sri Jyotilal, that you go to Kerala, you step on Kerala soil, you are on thorium, right? So thorium molten salts, the technology which we as a group we are planning to adopt, thorium molten salt reactor, and with heavy water as a moderator, it generates steam at 600 to 700 degrees centigrade. That steam is green steam you can utilize to generate power, as well as use that steam, get it reduced to hydrogen in an SOEC and generate green hydrogen. Now, this combination, it has a very specific advantage. SOEC has got about 30 to 35% less power consumption as compared to alkaline and PEM. And the thorium based, salt based nuclear reactor, a 30 megawatt electrical reactor, which we are working upon, comes in a 40 feet container. A 30 megawatt reactor comes in a 40 feet container, plugged with a thermal power a power plant. The cost of power is less than 2 cents. The cost of round the clock green power is less than 2 cents, which in combination with an SOEC gives you hydrogen below $1 a kg. Now, this is the game changer for the green hydrogen business. Because with this green cost of green hydrogen, the kind of green molecules which you produce, say HVO, which we call hydrogenated vegetable oil, SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, then green methanol, green ammonia, methylamine, dimethyl ether, all this can become green molecules which will fetch an excellent market across the globe, with India becoming the key exporters. So, the first time India could be exporters of energy. We have always been importers of energy. So, making green molecules by this process will help you become set history for yourselves, becoming the largest exporters. So, first of all, you become totally indigenous because you are thorium based. No dependence on any enriched. You have so many SMR technologies across the globe. Russians have been using 100 megawatt or 30 megawatt to 100 megawatt small modular reactors in their submarines for almost 3 decades. But they are all enriched uranium based, which makes you dependent on countries, especially members of the nuclear supply group, which basically shun you. So and the way I like to update the house, the way Indian government has been working, Niti Aayog, along with IYNS, Indian Youth Nuclear Society, we ourselves are developing a indigenous small modular reactor based on thorium molten salt and heavy water, which is called Sukam. Right? It's called Swachalit Uttarankit Kendrak. The Swachalit is indigenous, Uttarankit is evolutionary, Kendrak is refers to nuclear fission. And then M stands for micro, which is Sukshma. So they are 10 megawatt electrical reactors, which will get, say, critical by 2028 and maybe commercial by 2029. They come in 20 feet containers. That's being done in India. We are doing it. And we are in a very advanced stage of research. So basically, the whole concept is to make ourselves fully self sufficient, get hydrogen. In fact, not only green hydrogen, I would say low carbon hydrogen. One more step that the government of India has taken, Ministry of Power along with coal ministry, is gasification of coal gasification, where the whole intent is to get the cost of low carbon hydrogen to below $1 a kg. How do you get it? Today, I'll just give an example. We make about 35 million ton of urea today, and 8 million ton we import. And the percentage of import is rising 5% every year. The 35 million ton urea which we make in the country, our LNG, 90% is imported, the regasified LNG. Now, instead of all this, if we gasify our coal, high ash coal in Manali coalfields, Odisha, which we will not talk of after 20 years, if that coal is taken out, gasified, the cost of the urea will come to one third, because the cost of syngas out of this coal gasification is one third of cost of the syngas coming out of RLNG. So just to conclude, with all these technologies put together, the SMR, thorium salt based along with SOEC, we will get hydrogen at below $1 a kg, which will set India on a different orbit altogether. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. My next question is to Mr. Rajat Siksaria from Adani. Sir, large-scale green hydrogen production requires significant infrastructure support, which includes transmission lines, railway networks, port facilities, and so on and so forth. What are the key infra-related challenges that you have been witnessing, and how can the industry and the government collaborate or work together to overcome these?
So, thanks for inviting me and thanks for the question. So, first, since you asked how we have been addressing the question and what are our suggestions, so first part of my response will be how, as Adani, we are approaching the whole thing, and secondary, I'll put my industry hat and what should be done for the industry. See, at Adani, we believe supplying a derivative of hydrogen is actually a combination of 7 projects. You need to produce renewable power. You need to transmit either the electron or molecule, project number 2. You need to then have electrolyzer for hydrogen. You need to then have desalination water. You need to have a derivative and you need to have port. So effectively, a delivery of a molecule is combination of 7 main projects and maybe multiple sub projects. What has happened is a lot of us, including myself, who worked in power sector, we thought it's just the next step of converting electron into molecule. My own experience of being in the sector of 5 6 years shows that it has at least 3 times the commercial complexity and 4 times the technical complexity to deliver a molecule. One classic way in which this project can be done, this is how it's done in US, Australia, and Europe, is treat each of these projects as separate and let contracts guide this. You will have watertight contracts, which someone will buy electron, someone will transmit, someone will do water, someone will do, and then effectively you will produce the end product which will be bought. The belief in our group at Adani is that you cannot take such high contract on contract risk. Inevitably, if one party doesn't perform, whole chain goes into an array and we get into legal dispute. The best way to have this scalable project is to have a complete supply chain control. So we are approaching the infrastructure bit, have our own land, our own renewable power, our own transmission line, our own electrolyzer, our own ports to supply the molecules. That's the way we are approaching the whole sector, and also have our own renewable ecosystem. So have our own modules, have our own wind turbines, electrolyzers. So this is one way of approaching it, especially if you're doing large project. A million ton hydrogen actually means $25 billion of total capex investment, right? Even the bullet train that we are doing is not of that size. So it's a very large capex investment, and we need to plan for each stage to de-risk the whole project. So this is how we are approaching it. But as an industry person, I would think one specific point I'll put, everyone knows about transmission line, port requirements, desalination. One bit which I think probably we have not paid enough attention on. If this large quantum of energy has to be transmitted, we have not had quality debate in the country whether this transmission should happen in the form of electron or in the form of molecules. So all our focus has been in the form of electrons, and government of India is supported because they give free ISTS, which is good to kickstart a few projects. But if we are talking of multiple million tons over next decade, couple of decades, what is a more efficient form of transporting electrons or molecule? We believe, or at least I believe, that we should also significantly explore whether transmitting energy in the form of pipelines is that a better way to do it, or should we keep building this ISTS lines, or is that an efficient way to do it? So that piece of infrastructure is something which we need to pay attention on. And if we do agree that part of the energy transmission has to happen through pipelines, then we need to regulatory interventions. Today, there is no way by which we can build a hydrogen pipeline. It is not part of PNGRB Act, which has uh, petroleum and products, but not hydrogen specifically defined. We don't have regulations there. We don't know the pressure at which we can do it. We don't have norms for environmental clearances. So that piece of infrastructure is something which we can focus on. Today, Europe as a continent which is trying to adopt hydrogen, the highest focus is on building a hydrogen backbone, right, for distributing hydrogen. But for transmitting hydrogen within the country from area where you generate power and hydrogen to the ports, we are not talking about that. So that piece is something which I would uh, encourage policymakers to look at. And of course, ISTS planning is key part for the initial project. That is important part of how we transmit. So that continues to be an important challenge that the industry should look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I am also continuously being reminded that we don't have a lot of time on our hands, so I'll just request the other panelists to keep their responses brief. Um, Following up on the point that Mr. Sixeria was making, the next question is to Mr. Rajput. Uh, Mr. Sixeria also spoke about, the alternate transmission mechanisms, either the pipeline to transport the molecules or the lines as we have today to transport the electrons. Talking about the latter, sir, what do you think are the key measures and innovation being adopted in terms of enhancing and enabling the grid infrastructure for transfer of electrons as was being discussed?
Uh, Thank you. First of all, let us understand the difference between the pipeline transmitting the hydrogen or any liquid or the gas and the electricity line transmitting the electricity. There are multiple usage of the electricity. Those lines could be tapped at suitable locations, and those lines could be built over the country, all over the country, and the long lines, also at different voltage levels, depending on the power to be transmitted and how much is the quantum of the load is to be fed. So that's the basic difference. It's more economical to transmit the electricity than any other mode of transportation of the energy. So that we have to keep in mind, and say if exclusive offshore platform is there, either at the platform or near the very say coast, we are producing renewable electricity, this renewable based hydrogen, and the end use is not very far and require a continuous supply of the hydrogen. There we can think of this. Moreover, what I told in the beginning, the material science has to develop in which this hydrogen is not producing any type of the corrosion. As the time passes, and if that corrosion leads to a certain situation that it can come out, then it causes danger, obvious dangers. So basic need is, and also wherever the line is going, pipeline is going, you also need that say some right of way sort of thing, or you have to say dig out, and that digging also is a cause of concern. Just a simple example, if the crops are standing, you cannot enter into the field, and if the say lines some problems are there, the maintenance is very difficult. Whereas in case of the electrical lines, we have the hotline maintenance, and even if say in cyclones or the say high winds, our tower gets damaged, we have what is known as emergency restoration systems. Electricity lines also have another multiple use, that is in the form of the optical fiber. That ground wire at the top contains optical fiber, and that optical fiber can meet the need of the power systems as well as also the other needs of the communication systems.
So
Sure.
that's my view.
Thank you. Good. My next question is to Mr. Hiren Mehta from ACME. We understand some of the challenges which you also outlined that green hydrogen projects have been facing, from land acquisition to regulatory approvals and so on and so forth. What are our learnings so far, and what are some of the suggestions that we have in this regard?
Uh, See, land required for the green hydrogen process plant is not that significant. If I give an example, if 1 million ton green ammonia plant and 200,000 green hydrogen plant required around 300 acres. So that's not that big a challenge. It can be available at the port areas, nearby port areas. Having said that, uh, backbone for any green hydrogen plant is a renewable power, and renewable power required a large sum of the land. To give an example, 1 million ton of the green ammonia project would require around 100 square kilometer of the land. So, along with the land, the other bigger challenge is the connectivity. Not necessary that all the green hydrogen plant are located at the port and behind the meter concepts are there. So in that case, the power needs to be transmitted from the place where there's a better GHI. Now, in this scenario, while ISTS network is providing 35 years incentive to transmit this power, connectivity remains an issue. At this point in time, if you look at the GNA regulations for connectivity ISTS network, then in that case, the developer either should have the 50% land available, or they should pay rupees 10 lakhs per megawatt and acquire land in 12 months. Both these things have a challenge. If a developer wait for 6 months to acquire, but I would wait for first to acquire land and then they apply for connectivity, then maybe connectivity or substation capacity may not be available. And such project has to be developed in 3 to 4 years. So, I mean, policy makers may like to look at that. This project since required 3 to 4 years. If that 1 year timeline which has been given to acquire land can be extended. Other aspect, like we're talking about the green hydrogen hub, etc. It can also be looked at that the government can develop the solar park where they can acquire a large sum of the land and can be given to the developers on their merit for the concession, long-term concession agreement. So there are a couple of ways this issue can be handled, because I don't think so. There is a availability of land is an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Uh, yeah, we have three more speakers or panelists now, and we have to make up for some time as well. So I will request everybody's responses to be brief. Thank you. My next question is to Sri Vivek Tongaonkar from ONGC. So, what was also discussed in the panel earlier as well is that securing finances for large-scale green hydrogen projects still remains a challenge. What innovative mechanisms are being looked at or considered to be able to circumvent this issue?
Yeah, thank you, Ankit. Uh, yeah, we do realize that as far as finances is concerned, because hydrogen being a new area, it is not well understood as of now. There are many problems as far as financing is concerned, and because they do not fall in the regular sort of a projects, long-term projects that are being financed by banks or by financial institutions. However, what we are also seeing in the market is that there are many companies or many financial institutions who are more focused on green energy, who are willing to look at these projects. They are willing to go long on funding for these projects also. And many of the institutions, both uh, in India as well as abroad, are looking at financing these projects. Typically, these projects would require a longer financing period, and there would also be a certain amount of periods wherein there would be requirement for the returns not being there immediately for as far as these projects are concerned. So there could be a holiday that could be there as far as the repayments are concerned, the interest is concerned. And what we understand is that many foreign institutions are willing to do this, considering that these projects are likely to earn very significant carbon credits, which, though we do not have a carbon credit market over here, very buoyant market in India, but abroad it is something that it is very much sought after. So, in this way, we are finding that financing for these projects are available, and typically we could be looking at these sort of projects, these sort of fundings for these projects as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. My next question is to Mr. Naresh Lalwani from GSW. Enhancing the offtake of green hydrogen require development of certain robust market mechanisms. What are some of the specific suggestions that you have in this regard to boost demand and make green hydrogen commercially viable?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I will not take much time. So, as everyone had said, that offtake today, you go to any conference, you will find the equipment supplier, you will find the developer, you will find the energy supplier, but you will not find the offtaker. So, it really needs, but one thing is for sure, unless until government is supporting in a huge way, industry is also pushing the green hydrogen, unless until the green hydrogen, green ammonia, green steel becomes financially viable, I think no industry is going to produce it commercially. So I think we'll have to work. I think I like the suggestion of Mr. Kushing that we'll have to really look forward for the innovative ways that how to reduce the power cost, below 1.5 rupees, so that we can really produce in a commercial scale. I think you cannot push the off-taker. Like I will tell you the case of JSW Energy today is setting up a 25 megawatt of electrolyzer, and we are supplying this green hydrogen to JSW Steel, which is our sister concern. And there was a fight between two companies that why they should take the green hydrogen at a higher cost. So this is the situation today, and you cannot compel any off-taker to take at a very high cost. So it depends on the government, it depends on the industry to make it viable so that consumer should also not be impacted. I think that is my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Uh, Getting to the last of our panelists for the day, uh, to Mr. Shyam Gupta from RIL. We spoke about multiple avenues, both in terms of technology advancement, offtake, and so on and so forth. There was discussion on partnerships, both local and international, that should enable our green hydrogen program. What kind of partnerships do you think need to be fostered between governments, industry, and academia to make this a success?
Yeah, thank you. Hello. Yeah, thank you. Being last is blessing in disguise because you heard a lot about various aspects, and subsequently you are given the opportunity to speak. So it's good. At the outset, thank you for having me, CA, and congratulations for your Golden Jubilee celebration. Um, Green hydrogen, of course, is a new phenomena, but here we need to understand that green versus hydrogen, there is not much difference except green premium at the cost of the certification. So whenever we talk about green hydrogen, can we think from a different perspective as is brewing up across the globe? What is happening? They're looking at hydrogen, green hydrogen in two parts. One is whether it is low carbon or RFNBO, low carbon or zero carbon. So in this similar way, they are also looking into integrated approach in terms of reducing the cost at each and every stage and having the long term view so that they can supply the molecule to distance. So that is where my point is. So far we have been talking about electric hydrogen. So electric hydrogen and related derivatives, can we think about amalgamating this green definition with biofuels as well? Because there are so many biofuel that can be called biohydrogen, that can be called biomethanol, that can be called biosf. So until unless you have hydrogen and carbon together, you cannot actually solve the piece of the puzzle. So our approach should be graded and integrated. So whenever we are talking about incentivization domestically, like it is aligned with the international market. Let us grade it in terms of carbon and accordingly incentivization. In this similar fashion, whenever we are talking about biofuel, so we should leverage the biomass, be it MSW, be it any agricultural product, and amalgamate that part with the production of biohydrogen, which will be much cheaper as compared to rest. For instance, if we look at SMR, that is where gray hydrogen is coming. If we replace that with anaerobic digester of CBG, process is same. You are converting into green. Probably your cost will be slightly higher, not much. Eventually, hydrogen is being sold at the same, CBG is being sold at the same price. Similarly, when I say about, of course, there are so many other nuances, but in the paucity of time, I will just restrict by saying that in the integrated side, once again, um, we should look at how we can build CO2 transport pipeline, because we need to draw the lessons from oil and gas industry. Let's say petrol we are using, diesel we are using, can we make it green? E-diesel, e-petrol, or ESF as we are talking today. So cost is the problem, and for that we need to have the pipeline which can be repurposed either for CO2 or can be mandated for repurpose for hydrogen blended kind of transport. So that way, at least you can have the mass transfer and hydrogen can be transferred to the distances in the short term, and subsequently you can repurpose for 100%, or you can have the new build pipelines. In the similar way, you have already showed that Article 6 that could be leveraged in order to incentivize, and we need to do a lot, particularly from the certification, alignment, and definition. That will further reduce the anomalies in order to actually result in graded approach. And that is why we say that if we want to really build the future, we need to think about creating, as we are having the theme for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I think we had a fairly engaging discussion with points across the spectrum being made by our speakers. Uh, I wanted to summarize, but I think in the paucity of time, better that we move on. I would really like to thank all the delegates for their patience. I think we overshot on time significantly, but thanks a lot for your patience as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for the wonderful session we had. And we're extremely sorry not able to take any question and answers. We are running out of time now, as we have lunch after this, followed by valedictory session, which commences at 3 o'clock sharp. But before we close, I would now request Sri Ashok Kumar Rajput sir, our chairperson for the session, to kindly do the honors of presenting mementos to our distinguished panelists. Sir, सर आपसे निवेदन है कृपया आप mementos प्रदान करेंगे हमारे सभी panelists को. We present to our moderator Shri Ankit Hoshing. Shri Ankit Hoshing sir, I request you to kindly step forward. Thank you. We present to Shri K.R. Jyotilal ji. We present to Shri Abhay Bhakre ji, Mission Director MNRE. We present to Dr. Anita Gupta, Head Climate Change and Clean Energy Division, Department of Science and Technology. We present to Shri Vivek Chandrakant Tuggaonkar, Director Finance, ONGC. And now to our industry panelist, Shri Rajat Seksaria, Chief Executive Officer, Green Hydrogen and Derivatives, Adani New Industries. Shri Ranjit Gupta, Founder and Chief Executive Officer, OCR Energy. Shri Kapil Maheshwari, Chief Executive Officer, Wellspun New Energy. Shri Narendra Goyal, President Green Hydrogen, Avada Group. Shri Gautam Reddy, Chief Operating Officer, Greenco Group. Shri Siddharth Gupta, Chief Executive Officer, Electrolysers L&T. Shri Hiren Mehta, Chief Operating Officer, Green Hydrogen Acme Group. Shri Naresh Lalwani, Head Business Development, Hydrogen Business, JSW. Shri Kush Singh, Sector Head Power Business, RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. And Shri Sham Gupta, Head Energy Transition, RIL Limited. Shri Vivek Singla, President and Head, Green Hydrogen Business Renew. And may I now request Ms. Kavita Sharma, Additional Director, Head Energy and Infra SOCHEM, to kindly do the honors of presenting to our chair of the session, Shri Ashok Kumar Rajput. And I would request you, ma'am, to kindly join the panel for a group photograph. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, may I have your kind attention once again. I would like to bring your attention to this card, which is in the welcome kit provided to you when you came in yesterday. This card is there in your kit. You are requested to kindly fill in all your details along with the name, company name, phone number, and your email. And you may kindly proceed towards the registration counter to collect your kit. Thank you. This is for all the delegates. You have this card in your welcome kit. Kindly fill in your details and proceed towards the registration counter to collect your kit from there. Thank you very much indeed. Please join us for lunch, enjoy your lunch, and be seated back 10 minutes before 3 o'clock when we go ahead with our valedictory session. Thank you.